Okay, Nahidi, silence please. Okay, good evening everybody. My name is Probir and I'm from Pondicherry Citizen Action Network. Video made a presentation yesterday on the beach restoration. He's also from Pondicherry. We also have a slightly larger collective called AGG, Alliance for Good Governance, and AGG basically works in Pondi on social and environmental issues. And then we have All for Water for All, which is a much larger collective, which is for the whole bioregion, of which I'm going to talk to you about. And it has people from Auroville, Marakanam, Pondicherry, Bahur, Kadlor, and all that. So my topic is collaboration for water conservation with children. Now, the word collaboration was actually thrust upon us because earlier, we would come to know about a project that the government is planning to implement, and we would find out that it is disastrous. It's going to have a lot of impacts. So we would go and try to speak to them, but they would say, oh, it has been approved, the funds have been given, the project has started, now we cannot stop it. In spite of knowing the kind of impacts it will have, they have to continue. So finally, one classic example was they wanted to build a deep water port in Pondicherry for 20 million tons of coal and iron ore. I'm sure Philio must have talked to you about it yesterday. And we came to know about that, and we said that we need to stop this. So we started Pondicherry. And then we found out that we were working on environmental issues, but it was a big scam. So we had to fight for 6 long years, and ultimately in 2013 it was scrapped. But we had to go through national media, we had to go through High Court and Supreme Court of India, and we had to go to all over, to Delhi to meet all the ministers there, and eventually we managed to scrap it. But that's when we learned that we need to build collaboration because there are issues which you can't do by yourself. You need to have a larger collective. So collaboration is something which is very critical in all our work. Collaboration means enrolling people in your initiative. So you have to involve the government, you have to involve the experts, the communities, students, as many people as possible to build this collaboration. There's another important word which is not appearing here, is integrated. Now, integrated is when you have to work on all the aspects. When you have these kind of long-term initiatives, you need to have integration of a lot of things. For example, first you need to have information, because if you want to make an informed decision, or if you want to do something, you have to have information. So you have to gather the information. Then you need to have a planning. Most of our work projects that happen is without any plan. We call it a disease called projectitis. They just love projects. Get funds, do projects. Get funds, do projects. Doesn't matter what happens. So they have this disease called projectitis. So we need to do some kind of a planning. And in that planning, we need to involve the local communities because it has to be something which people want. And then we have to get into the organizing workshops, events, to get people together, to remind ourselves where we are heading and so on. And finally, the implementation and ground level action, where we need to be involved in in actually implementing projects. Can I change it? Okay.
I can go to the next slide.
Okay. So essentially, we are talking about harmonizing within ourselves, harmonizing with the society we live in, and harmonizing with the environment. So whether it is the collaboration is about that, integration is about that, how we build harmony at every step, at every level. The other thing which we need to do, if we have decided to do, is work at a macro level and also at a micro level. So first I'm going to present to you about our macro level work. So when we started, deciding that every time it's a conflict situation with the government, we have to go to courts, we have to go to media and all this. We decided that we need to change our strategy. So what we decided after a lot of deliberation and consultation is that we have to do two things. One, get into a planning stage, because that's where the problem starts. We have to get into planning stage. And secondly, we need to work with the government, not always be in conflict. So these are the two things which we did, and we started this macro level work. So when you want to do planning, you need to have some kind of a boundary which you're talking about. Otherwise, how do we talk to each other without defining the boundaries? When we started talking about Pondi has actually 14 pockets. It's not contiguous. So it has 14 pockets, and in between you have parts of Vilupuram district, parts of Cuddalore district. So you have, for example, the Usteri Lake, which is half in Pondicherry, half in Tamil Nadu. Same thing with Bahur. Some of the channels which come through Pondi, then Tamil Nadu, then Pondi, then Tamil Nadu. So you can protect your water, but then the Tamil Nadu portion, what do you do? Or the Tamil Nadu people are protecting, if the Pondicherry people don't protect, what happens? So we need to look at a much larger scale, because say Auroville may be protecting its water, but what if in the neighboring areas they drill bore wells and they start sucking water? Whatever conservation you do, the water aquifers will get depleted because they are sucking out the water. So you need to look at a much larger scale. So when we were discussing that, we decided that we need to go beyond the administrative boundaries of Pondi, Auroville, Vilupuram, Cuddalore, and we need to look into the watershed area, because that is absolutely the foundation on which everything is done. Whether residential, agricultural, industrial, everyone needs water. And if we are sharing the same bowl of water, we need to work together. So we came up with this concept of bioregional planning. And the thing is, the foundation is the natural infrastructure. We take the natural infrastructure as the foundation. Then it cannot be top down. It's not government deciding and telling you what to do, or not neither bottom up. So we work together. Thirdly, we always look at urban and rural in separate contexts. Even in the planning department, you'll have urban development and rural development. They don't talk to each other. So it's a huge, polarization. And the town needs water, town needs food, town needs energy, but they don't produce in the towns. They take it from rural areas. But when the towns grow, they slowly eat up the rural areas, and it's a chaos. So we need to create a healthy rural-urban continuum, and that is how we can build up sustainable communities. So there are two objectives. One is to address the region-wide concerns, like Usteri water being partly in Pondicherry and partly in Tamil Nadu, and also to see how we can work together for prosperity. And for this, that collaboration is the key. Next. So this is the boundary that we're talking about. This is Pondicherry. It's a 40 kilometers radius that we started with. Of course, we need to do more detailed studies on defining the exact boundary, but initially it's so the thing is the 2,500 square kilometers area, and it consists of 5 sub-ecoregions. You have the Kaliveli tank here, you have Auroville here, you have Usteri here, Bauru here, and Perumal Eri, which is here. So these are the sub-regions, and so this covers all that. So talking about, and the 80 kilometers coast, which is common. So just imagine if we don't work together. In Pondicherry, we have created the coastal erosion problem, and people here are facing have to face this problem. So unless we work together, these cannot be addressed. So we are starting with natural infrastructure. So along the coast, we go up. Along the coast, we have the beaches, sand dunes, estuaries, mangroves, and so on. Then you have the wetlands, the ponds, the tanks, and so on, and the rivers and channels which bring in the water towards the sea. And finally, we have the forests, which are crucial to support the wetlands, regulate the soil erosion, biodiversity, and carbon sequestration. And also, this is very closely interlinked because of the language, about the resources that we share, the tourism, and so on. So it has a lot of linkages, historical linkages. So we need to see this as one piece, not in bits and pieces.
And where is Auroville in that map? I don't
Just The previous one?
Yes.
Yeah, Auroville.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can imagine that there's a building. So you have a foundation, you have a structure, and you have a superstructure. So the spatial foundation is basically all the things which were there even before humans came in. So the water, the soil, the flora, the fauna, and so all these which were there even before. That's the foundation. Then we come to the structure, which is about the human settlements, the habitats. Whether it's rural or urban, these are the habitats, and the infrastructure which is required. For example, water, drainage, sewage, etc. on one side, and on the other side you have health, education, etc. So these are the structures which house these things. And then you have the superstructure, which are all the activities. Now you have two kinds of activities, economic and non-economic. In economic, you have the primary, secondary, and tertiary, and the non-economic economic ones, you have cultural, social, religious, so everything. And whatever we do, there is an impact on the environment. So we need to decide collectively what is the future we want, because anything being done in this neighborhood is going to affect the others. So we need to decide collectively, and then we need to come out with a vision document and then see how to implement it. Next, please. So since 2007, we started conducting a whole lot of meetings trying to push this concept of bioregional planning. Now the planning department says, no, no, there is nothing called bioregional planning. We have rural planning and we have urban planning. So it was difficult to convince them about bioregional planning. So we had a workshop here in Auroville first. It was called Water Management through Integrated Planning and Regional Collaboration. So after the workshop, one of the town planning officers in Pondi said, I remember there was a letter from the center. And after a lot of search, he found out a letter which was written way back in 1986 by the government of India to government of Pondicherry and Tamil Nadu, that Pondicherry and Auroville are fast-growing cities. You need to take up regional planning. Okay, 2005, another reminder was sent. No action was taken. But those two letters became the basis for the bioregional planning push. And then we had meetings in Pondi, in Tamil Nadu, pushing people, going to Delhi, having meetings with eminent people. Everybody was, loved the idea, but there was no provision. So we had to get that provision in place. So we also had another very interesting meeting in Auroville, which was because of the bioregional planning, the town and country planning office in Delhi decided that regional planning is an important thing. So there was a meeting here. They called the 5 states and told them that you need to get into regional planning because this is the way forward. So I'll just cover 4 aspects. One is the report, which is about information systems, which I talked about. The second is the consultation. Third is the actions we take on the ground, and fourth is the policy. So this is a study we did for 1.5 years. It was funded by them. And basically what we did was did a lot of GIS mapping, spoke to the communities to see whether the concept of bioregional planning is acceptable or not. And it was obviously that we need to work together. So that concept was very clear. And we did mapping, field visits, stakeholder workshops. And the idea was to see what are the strengths that each of these sub-regions have, and what are the challenges, and how can we collectively make a roadmap for sustainable development. And the 4 key sectors we took were land use, transportation, water, and energy. So this report was released in 2012, and that is the foundation for the bioregional planning, where extensive workshops, we had workshops in Auroville, Villupuram, Kadlur, all over, with fishermen, with farmers, ministers and farmers sitting together and discussing the way forward, which they would normally not do because they keep fighting all the time. But we managed to get people together. This is the whole thing about collaboration, where they started listening to the others and understanding that some kind of a thing was building up. Next, please. So this is the land cover map of 2011. So of course, land is valuable, as we all know. And it is a resource that represents a physical manifestation of all our aspirations. The buildings, all our whatever we do comes under the land use. And through land use planning, we can see how to have optimal utilization of land. And finally, the purpose of the PVAC bioregional planning was to see how we can improve the quality of life, because unless we that if that is the focus, the people have to be focused, not the projects and not other things. The focus has to come on the well-being of the people. Next, please. So, and as we know, the transport infrastructure is kind of the backbone, because the transport and the land use are kind of chicken and egg story. So we need to look into the transport sector very carefully. So what is happening today is urban sprawl, no control. Buildings come up without any permissions, and it's just creating havoc. And then to cover those houses, you have to build all kinds of infrastructure to support them. So it's crazy. And we decided that if we want to protect the water bodies, this was all discussions in the bioregional planning. We need to protect our water bodies, our forests, our agriculture, have some recreational spaces. How can we have these spaces all over? And secondly, that how can we make a shift? So then we came out with this concept. This is called the 5-finger concept, which was done first in Denmark, in Copenhagen. So basically, this is the center, and you have, it's not very clear, but see, there is one wing going here, 2, 3. So you have these big hubs: Tindivanam, Villupuram, Pandurti, and Kadlur, and Pondicherry. So this is called the transit-oriented development, which means that you have these corridors and you allow developments only on these corridors, and the remaining areas are restricted for protecting the water bodies and so on. So everyone has recreational spaces. You have the water bodies and so on. And so if we can make this into efficient and good public transport systems, right now it's all about cars. So if we can have good public transport system connecting these 5, then we can actually afford to keep these spaces. For example, this is the Kaliveli tank, this is Auroville area, this is Usteri, this is Bahur. So these spaces can be preserved for as natural spaces. And so this is, as we call, the transit-oriented development. So this is something which came up during the discussion, that this is the way to go. We need to have development, of course, because people have to look into economy, but we also need these green spaces. Next, please. So this is a meeting we had, the last big meeting we had in 2018, and it was organized by All for Water for All, of which people from the entire bioregion is a part of. So this was, we had the Lieutenant Governor, the Chief Minister, all the political bigwigs, and the MLAs from Villupuram and Kadlur. And these are some of the excerpts, what people said. Basic thing was, they all said this is the only way to go forward, because we have to look into this whole bioregional planning. And the Chief Minister, in fact, what needs to be done is, okay, we are working at the ground level, and Mr. Krishnan, who is the Principal Secretary of Tamil Nadu, said that they are trying to do bioregional planning in 8 places in Tamil Nadu, but no response, because the people are not willing to do. The government wants to force the bioregional planning, it's not working. Whereas here, it's the other way around. People are ready with the bioregional planning, and they are, done so much of work, but the government is not responding. So in that meeting, the Chief Minister actually agreed that we had given him the recommendation that we need to make a structure where Pondicherry, Auroville, Tamil Nadu, and Delhi are part of that committee, because it has to be backed by them. Unless there is a government backing, we will not be able. We can do a lot of work, but it will not have legality. Next. So in that meeting, we had presentations from each of the sub-regions. What are the strengths? What are the challenges? And we had group discussions on 6 topics. One is, how do we build this institutional framework? How to coordinate between the sub-regions? And how do we gather information and share information? and on thematic topics of water, transportation, and coast. And like Stanley Youth says, a good plan is like a roadmap. It shows the final destination and usually the best way to get there. So this is I'm talking about a bioregion, which is a large canvas. Now we come down to Pondicherry. So Pondicherry, this is all the work that we have done in Pondi. So we all talk about fresh water is vital, it is there in the constitution and so on. But if you go to any water body in Pondi or anywhere, you'll see it is just dumped with trash and encroachments and sewage flowing into it and so on. Because today you open the tap, there's water and you have the container. So our consciousness is just between the tap and here. We don't care where it comes from and we don't care where this sewage water is going. All we care for is this part where I get water. So as a result, earlier the communities were dependent on these ponds and tanks. So they took really good care. But today it's just not needed anymore. So all the water bodies in Pondi are just in a total mess. And as Hubert Reeves said, man is the most insane of species. He worships an invisible God and destroys the visible nature, unaware that this nature he destroys is the God he is worshipping. So this is something which we talk so much about water, the importance of water, but we actually don't care as long as we get our quota of water. Now in Pondicherry, we are actually very fortunate because the Cholas, who lived 1,000 years ago, had come up with an absolutely ingenious system. They looked into environmental aspects, social aspects, and economic aspects. Environmentally, what they had done was build these 87 tanks, and each one connected with ponds. And there are these channels which take water from one to the other. And so that way, there was not a drop of rainwater which would be missed. It was basically, they did not have so much of population at that time, and they did not need so much of food. But they have created this for groundwater recharge, and even in the worst summer, Pondicherry never ever had a drought in the 1,000 years. But now we are in a mess. So then they had a system called Kudi Maramattu. Kudi Maramattu is where the community, the tank association, each tank had an association. They would manage the tanks in terms of planning, in terms of carrying out the work. Everything was done by the community. And finally, economically, the user fructs money, which is the fish contracts from the pond and tanks, and the what they get from the trees, from the harvest of the palm trees and so on, was used for desilting the pond and things. So it was something which went smoothly for 1,000 years without any problem. So there was money, enough money, and the people were taking care because they were dependent on those tanks and ponds. Then when the French government took over, they institutionalized the system. The syndicate agricole was for the bigger tanks, the 87 tanks. Of course, now there are only 84. And case commune was for the ponds. And but the system continued. The user fructs, the Kudi Maramat system, everything continued as it is. But when the Pondicherry government took over, it was PWD and local administration. The tanks are looked after by PWD and the ponds by local administration. And they don't believe in giving anything to the community because that's not where they can make money. So it was given on contract. So year after year, budgets are sanctioned for desilting of ponds and channels. No work is done. Money is paid. And it's written that the work is complete. So it's a story, it's an endless saga which is going on. In the records, you'll see that the work is carried out. But if you are living there, you know that no work has happened, no JCB has come, no workers have come. But monies are sanctioned and paid, and no work is done. So this is what has been happening. In '99, the problem became so serious that the government had to ban bore wells up to 6 kilometers. But in '99, they invited the European Union, asked them for help, and they got 34 crores for the tank rehabilitation project of Pondicherry. When the experts came, they studied the whole thing and then they said, we will give you the funds only if you revive the ancient system, the Kudi Maramat and the user fructs thing. So for 5 years it ran, and in those 5 years they rejuvenated the entire system, and it became like the good old days. Therefore, the PWD department continued it till 2008 with the tank associations and all that. In 2009, the government changed and they decided no more communities, contracts again. So the thing has gone back to the contract system and absolutely in a mess, all the tanks and ponds. So since 2018, we started some initiatives. Next, please. The first thing we did was we took the maps of the tanks because we need to know where are the tanks and ponds. So this is Pondicherry as a whole, all the tanks and ponds. We have 2 municipalities, Pondicherry and Urgare, and we have 5 commune panchayats. These are the rural areas. Next. So in 2018, we had our governor, Dr. Kiran Bedi, and we had a massive support from her. Every weekend, she would come out to these places where the things are in a mess, and she will call all the offices, and they'll ask, "What is why this tank is not desilted? Why this?" No. So that's how the PWD started working. We restored the Kanaganeri and many other tanks and ponds. And this is one of the channels. And one plain excuse that they would give is there's no funds, you know. So we said, okay, they don't have funds. Let's tap the CSR funds, the corporate social responsibility, which they have to spend anyway. So through CSR funds, we restored 86 kilometers of channels. Now these channels are arteries. If the channels are not clear, one tank will get full. But if it is full, the water will spill over and just get wasted. The other tank will not get filled. So these channels had to be cleared. We cleared 86 kilometers of the channel. And then she also came for a walk from the Sitari Aneka to Manapet tank, which was about 6.7 kilometers. And on the way, we showed her that these ancient systems, this is an aqueduct. There's a farm on that side, there's a farm on this side, and this is the canal. So when that farm gets enough water through rain or through the channels, the system was primary, secondary, and tertiary. Even the last farmer would get water through these channels to his farm just by gravity. No pump, no electricity was required. It was just by gravitational force that the water would come there. And there would never be any flooding because the moment this farm will get filled up, it will come through this aqueduct which runs over this channel and come to the next farm. So you'll always have enough water and never any flooding. And the other unique thing they had was the siphons. See, there's a canal coming from there. There's a canal here, and it comes below that. I mean, it can flow into the tank, but it can also come below. Now, what happens when there's a very heavy monsoon? This canal will get filled up. So this water cannot come in to this canal. In which case, all these places will get flooded. So in the siphon, what happens? The water comes. If there is excess water, it goes below the canal and continues. So there is never any water logging. But now these are all choked, which needs to be cleared up. So this is actually in Bahur, where you can see all these aqueducts and siphons, and it's the rice bowl of Pondicherry. So you have medicinal plants to agriculture. So this was the walk we did, where she realized that how important these channels are, because many of these farmers had the farmers, they get free electricity, so they can put bore wells and just pump out water without any cost. Now there are 8,000 and more bore wells running in Pondicherry, but these farmers had put their pump into the channel and taking water from here. So we stopped and asked the farmer, why are you taking water? Because water is anyway free for you. The farmer said, even at 750 meters depth, the water has become saline. We prefer this water than that water. So the point is that earlier, everybody depended on surface water. But because the surface water system has collapsed, the farmers are forced to use the borewell waters. So that was where she realized that actually the channels are very critical because they are the arteries, and the farmers would prefer to use surface water rather than groundwater because groundwater has anyway become saline. Next. Now, then coming to the more specific. Now, we talked about Pondicherry and we talked about the water systems. So this is where we come to very specific projects. This was a place which was a garbage dumping site, and the collector gave us a challenge that this used to be a pond called vernacular, you have to restore it. And since we had taken the challenge, we worked with the local MLA and the collector, and we got it restored. The government doesn't have funds, so we have to restore it through by mobilizing money from the community. We spent about 3 lakhs and we restored that pond, and it's about 50 lakh liters, which was once like this, a garbage dumping site, and now it has been taken up under the smart city project, because we have to remember that these ponds are number one for water. Yes, we need water, we need the groundwater recharge, so these ponds are required. But it has two other works. It is for biodiversity. So we've been planting a lot of trees, local species around the ponds, palm trees and other local species, which are crucial for the biodiversity part of it. And thirdly, it's a recreation space. Pondicherry is starved of recreation space. The only place you can walk is on the beach, and that is just overcrowded. These places, the moment we restored this, you see early morning and evenings people walking around the pond, and it becomes a nice, lovely social gathering space. So it is, yes, water is needed, but you also need these social spaces, these green spaces where people can come. And now we see turtles and migratory birds coming even to this small pond. Next, we went to Abhisheka, which is further south, and there was a pond which had not been desilted for 50 years, and it had got all settled up. So just imagine the kind of weed which had grown and the depth which we had to dig. It took us about 6 weeks to do that, and lot of fundraising to get that work done. But now it's a 25 million liter tank. It was a pond. Now it has actually it's called the area Kulam. So area means tank, and Kulam means pond. So this is actually a Kulam, but now it has become a tank. Next. This is the other problem that Pondicherry government does is, they will allocate a place of big place for building an office, and now there's a pond there, so they will fill up the pond and whatever, and they will delist it from their records. So nobody knows that there is a pond because it is not in the government list. And like that, they have been delisting. Out of the 609 ponds, there are hardly 450 left. Even out of that 450, only 200 ponds are barely surviving. So this is the situation we are into. So this is one pond which belongs to what was given away to the electricity board. A substation was built there. This pond was just filled with junk. So we found this pond. It was such a lovely pond with old brickwork walls and very pretty looking pond. We said that we need to revive it. So we revived it. And this gentleman, he is a police officer who lives just behind here. And he said when we were kids, we used to come swimming here. So he came for the inauguration day and he saw these kids were swimming, and they were so happy that it's like 40-year-old story, which has now he can see that the children are enjoying themselves in the pond. Next. Then one of the junior engineers took us inside, behind the substation, which is actually not permitted. We are not permitted to go there. And he said this is also a pond. So we checked the revenue department of 1972, because right now it has been delisted. You can't get it on the record. And we saw that there was a pond. It was a huge pond. So we cleaned it up and planted a lot of trees and all that. And now all the houses around it, they were complaining that this place is just full of snakes and problems. Now it's become a good recreation spot for the surrounding neighborhood. Next. This is another thing that happens. This was a pond, and the PWD wanted to close it and build an overhead tank. Okay, just imagine you have a pond and you close it and you build an overhead tank which is probably 1/10 the capacity. Anyway, so they filled it up. So we had some hard negotiation with the municipality, and municipality said we have given it off to PWD. So that went on for a long time. So they were creating all kinds of hurdles, but eventually we got the LG to the Lieutenant Governor to intervene, and it was given to us. And we made this bund and created this pond. And that day there were a lot of encroachments. Fortunately, the commissioner was there, and we managed to get the encroachments removed. And it was just boundary wall, so we managed to get it and rejuvenated this entire pond. There are about 9 neighborhood associations around that. So we've got them together, and they were all thrilled to see this pond. So now they have registered an association. So they are going to build a children's park and put security lights and security and CCTV camera. So now they are deciding everything. Now they celebrate their birthdays, etc., near this pond. So and now they have taken a decision that there are 18 ponds in that area. They will actually work towards rejuvenating all the 18 ponds. So once the people come together, the community people come together, and they're all well off, and they don't mind doing it. But the question is, who will take the first step? Who will start the process? So anyway, so now that they have the whole thing, they've planted trees and they have a lot of functions around this area. Next, please. This is another interesting place. This belonged to the one school. It is the SRS school in Saram. It's a low-lying area. It's actually not a pond. So when the education secretary called us and said that, can you help us? This is about almost 1.5 acres of land, and we need to do something because the whole place gets flooded. And again, this was a den for drunkards, and so first of all, the surrounding regions would get flooded, and it was a nuisance for the local community. So they came, so Anvarasu took us there, and he was the Secretary of Education and also of Agriculture. So we saw this place. This is where you came, Johnny. Oh yeah, and Sandeep. So what we did is we studied the place and we saw that there were 3 neighborhood associations around it, and that the sewage was underground, but the rainwater was coming into this place, into this area. So we said that why don't we make it into a rainwater harvesting structure? So if we make it a rainwater harvest, we can tap the water from all these areas and we can make it into a lovely recreational space. So we did that, and now the walk around that area is about 1 kilometer. We still have to build the children's park on the 2 ends, and in fact, the kids were very excited that they'll get a children's park right in the doorstep. They said we have to cycle 15 kilometers to go and play somewhere, but now they'll get some space right in front of the doorstep. And next. So that was individual projects that we have taken up, and this is how the government gets convinced and has trust in you that you are interested to work with the government. Otherwise, they'll say you just want to talk, you just want to meet, but you don't do really any work. But after seeing those kind of projects that we did, then we organized a meeting. It is called Collaboration for Integrated Water Resource Management. Now, Pondicherry government has a water policy document, which was done in 2016. It is a fantastic document, talks about collaboration, talks about mapping, talks about community and all that, but they just would not implement it. So we got all the government departments. Just imagine we are a civil society organization. We are calling a meeting where the government comes, all the departments, PWD, Forest, all these people. They all came and we had a discussion on these are the things that we need to look into. And we have to actually implement the water policy. So it was agreed that we will go ahead and implement the water policy. Next, please. Subsequently, we had a meeting about information system, because the funny part is all the departments, forest, agriculture, PWD, they have a lot of information, but they don't share, even with the other departments. So as if it is some kind of a private property. So we said that if we don't know the boundaries of a pond, how are we supposed to restore these ponds? Or how are the community supposed to restore these ponds? So we have to make, first of all, it's scattered. It's not actually up to date. So all these things we have to do, because these are all public assets and public has to know about it. How can you keep this information secret and say that no, there is we cannot share this information? So now it has agreed. Tom was there, Julia was there, they had all come. We had a big meeting to discuss what do we want to see, because everybody wants to see different things in the information system. Somebody just wants to see the inlet channel, outlet channel. Somebody wants to know the chemical properties, what is the TDS level or what is the BOD, COD level, and so on. So we listed out all the things that we need to put in the information system and make it public so that everyone has access to it. And we told them that all your departments can sit in your office and know, because we will be working with the students to get information about all the tanks and ponds sitting in your office. Next, please. This is doesn't look very good, but this is the channels and tanks of Pondi, and we convinced them that they need to take up all the 5 channel systems, because if the channel systems are taken up and cleaned, desilted, then all the tanks and ponds will get abundance of water. Next.
And what are the 2 rivers? There are 2 rivers, right?
Yeah, there are 2 rivers.
What are the names?
This is Jinji River and this is Pandaya River. This is the or Chunamba. These are different names, and this is the Pandaya River.
And this is the bioregion?
This is the bioregion, yeah. Okay, now we come to another topic. This was last year we had bountiful rains, as you all know, and all the tanks and ponds were full. So we decided that we need to celebrate water. So we organized this water festival. We call it Stewardship for Water and Biodiversity. It was a 50-day festival. Started on 2nd February, World Wetlands Day, and finished on 22nd March, which is World Water Day. And basically to do 2 things. One is to celebrate, and the other is how can we get people involved in this whole effort of rejuvenating water bodies. So the inauguration was held in the school where, which was last restored, the SRS school, where you had come. And we launched 2 things. One was the Neerkudam Yatra, of which I'll be talking about, and also the OSOP, One School, One Pond project. Next. Okay, One School, One Pond project is something which we came up, is that the government will do nothing about the ponds. There are about 450 schools in Pondi. What if each school adopts 1 pond? So now the school has chemistry lab, physics lab, all kinds of labs. So why don't we make this pond into an eco lab? So they can learn about water and biodiversity. And, because you can't sit in your classroom and learn about environment. You have to be in the field. They can do tree planting, they can make a butterfly park, do beekeeping, whatever. So let the students decide what they want to do and make it into an eco lab. The education department, fortunately, we still have some good officers. They loved it. They said, why not? So we launched this OSOP. We call it ASAP as early as possible, but this is OSOP, One School, One Pond. And the second part was that, we learn the subjects which are all in silos: history, geography, math, science. Everything is like separate. But we said, why don't we integrate all these subjects around the topic of pond? Because the pond has a history. You can learn about the geography of the pond, do GIS mapping, learn all about water cycles and things. You can do a lot of mathematics, the volume, the area, etc. How do you do that? And then the chemical properties. The students can actually monitor what are the the TDS level, whether the inlet channel is clear and outlet channel is clear. So the students can actually take responsibility. So not only will they learn, but they will be taking a very important thing about addressing these social community challenges. So this will be some kind of an experiential learning where they actually learn while working on the pond. So this pond, this OSOP, was something which was taken up in all the schools in Pondi, and each school had appointed 1 coordinator who will take up the whole OSOP program. So right now we are working on a curriculum, how to make a curriculum, and this is a big challenge because we had run a program called Seeds of Change, which was environmental awareness. We ran it for 5-6 years. The children were thrilled because it was they're going out and learning about environmental issues. But after 5 years, some education officer came and said, no, we don't want this kind of thing because it is overburdening the students. We already have so many subjects, we don't want 1 more subject. Though the students actually were very sad when the project was stopped because they loved the Seeds of Change program. So this is something which we need to do, and also it will build in the students some kind of a sense of responsibility for the community. Next please. And Neerkudam Yatra, what we did is we collected water. This is the Neerkudam. Neerkudam is water container. So we collected from Pondicherry, which is the largest water body of Pondicherry, and it's actually a important wetland in Asia. and it has a lot of migratory birds. It's a beautiful place. So we collected the water, and each school would take that neer kudam and go and hand it over to the next school. The principal or the headmaster, along with some students, will go and hand it over to the next school, and the next school will receive it. I mean, the whole school will be there. All the students will be there. They'll be receiving it very ceremoniously. Taking the neer kudam, putting it in a place, and we had a pledge, water pledge, which they will all read out that we will take care of water and so on. And they would organize some functions. So each school, we had three neer kudams. One went north from Pondi, one went south, and one went west. So these neer kudams traveled to all these schools where they were received. And so in the function, one of us would speak on water in general. We would have somebody from the community who would come and speak, showing giving their assurance that they will help the school in the one school, because the one school one pond project has to be done with the support of the local community. So this will also build in them the social skills of talking to the community. Otherwise, they actually are not exposed to talking to the people. So they talk to them, and so the community people were represented, and they gave the assurance that they will help you with the OSOP program. And we had the headmaster, headmistress speaking, and sometimes some of the children would speak also. And it was beautiful the way they had organized this function of the neer kudam traveling. And each place, the school students would go and put a little bit of water from this neer kudam into the pond that they have adopted, and take a little bit of water from there and put it in the neer kudam. So this is basically to symbolizing the interconnected. Of course, in the groundwater aquifer, it's all connected, but on the surface can be connected. So they were tracking where the neer kudams are going, and eventually we took the neer kudams and put it back in the Ustari lake to show that it's the whole cycle. Next. So during the water festival, in all the schools we conducted these competitions. The theme was always my school, my pond. So we had this drawing, essay writing, banner, and each school prepared one neer kudam. So this was a competition, so they got first, second, third prize and all that. And to see which is the best neer kudam that they have prepared. And they've done some beautiful stuff on the neer kudam. And the fifth competition was a 3 minutes video on the pond. So the students had to actually make a video talking about the pond, a little bit of the history, the area, and all that. So we have a collection of 3-minute videos from all the schools talking about the pond. So if this becomes kind of a competition where each time they get different kind of information, it can be integrated, and the school ponds, we can make an archive of the different stories of the pond, of a particular pond in one school. So this is what we did. So thank you. And I'll just end with this quotation. The future is not some place we are going to, but one we are creating. The paths are not made to be found, but made. And the activity of making them changes both the maker and the destination. And I can tell you this journey has been so wonderful when you work with the students, when you work with the community, even the government officers, they come out all out to help you. So the synergy that is built when you work like this, when there is so much of enthusiasm, energy, it has been actually quite a game changer. Thank you. Any questions? I'm open.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Well, I was wondering, because you're talking about the columns and then you're talking about the tank. So I was wondering, is there like a size difference?
Yes.
Or what is the size?
The size is a measurement. It's a certain volume of.
But how much makes it a column?
It's about 2 hectares or something. So the size is just dependent on the size.
Yeah. Okay.
Have you had any experience with working with the panchayat?
Actually, we have not been working with the panchayat. We've been working mostly with the NGOs because there are no panchayats at the moment.
Not in Pondi.
Not in Pondi. We're going to have the panchayat elections very shortly.
Yeah, here we have just happened.
Okay. It was scheduled, but then somebody went to court and now it's been postponed. I think it's going to be held in December. So we actually don't have a panchayat system, but we work with the local communities. They have the tank associations are still alive. The tank association is actually separate from the panchayat, the village panchayat. The tank association has a president, secretary, and all this structure, and they are responsible for maintaining the tank and look into the user flux and all that.